All right, it is May 16th, 2020. We're talking today in the CTI Zoom meeting all about state requirements. So just to keep everything sort of on track for everybody, we've got an agenda. Today's going to be a little bit different because we're going to do a little bit more question and answer with Craig later. Because the agenda is kind of limited, we're set at an hour. So if somebody's talking and they're kind of getting beyond the scope, I will mute you and cut you off. It's not personal. It's just to sort of keep everything on track. So, but we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I wanted to hit a couple updates for everybody. The first thing we wanted to talk about is in the first meeting, we talked about each one of us reaching out to our local distributors to try to get them to support CTEF. I don't know if you guys have had the chance to do that. This is actually a really good opportunity as everything starts winding back up, because again, we'll be able to push the value of qualified labor to the distributors. That's savings for them. It's money that they're not going to lose in the future if they support qualified labor. We want to push that. We want to get them on board so we can direct them to the CTEF website. Has anybody had the chance to go try that or not yet?
Not yet.
Yeah. So I highly encourage. It's a little.
Been doing it.
Huh?
I've been doing that.
See, that's why you're a rock star, Paige. So it's a little intimidating. Nobody likes to ask for money. If that's maybe something that's holding you back, try to reframe it. You're not asking for money, you're offering value, and you're asking them to join in a partnership. But definitely reach out, boots on the ground. Even if you go in and you say, hey, somebody from CTEF might give you a call, talk to them, talk to the people who are the decision makers. If you give a good foothold for us, we can get in and we can start working them too. But if CTEF has to do cold calls, one, there's just not enough people to do that many cold calls, and two, it's just not successful coming out of nowhere. So that's the one thing we really wanted to hit that again. If you can, please start hitting your distributors. Wayne, do you want to say something?
Guys are all on curbside up here. We're not even allowed in the showrooms or in the warehouses yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's
hard to talk to them.
Aaron?
We can push it down here. Joe, Joseph, before we move on, I know you talked about the fluctuation in attendance. I really think that we need to have Kathy on here, and we need to make sure that that time is going to work for everybody.
Yep.
Just in terms of social media, if that's somebody that's in charge of that box, I think that we should all commit around that time, because what's the point?
Agreed.
If we don't.
Agreed. So the next thing we wanted to talk about, Christine Whittemore, she's doing a story about Transform the Trade. I know she's reached out on a couple of the groups. If you haven't gotten the chance to talk to her yet, please reach out to her on Facebook. You can PM her. But she's specifically looking for people and about, where that's going, what that means, and how we can use that. So please reach out to her. Then in addition to that, the CTEF website, the homepage has actually been updated a little bit. So if you guys visit that, the very first thing you see is click to access training videos. And then it's got a few of those buttons that we've talked about in the past. So they are starting to change things about there. It is a slow moving machine to update these things, unfortunately, but wanted to let you guys know there is progress being made. So if you visit the CTEF website, which is ceramictilefoundation.org, you can see the updates. The last, and I would say probably the most interesting update that we've had in the last week, Aaron posted in a couple of the groups a link to a tile letter article about Decton University. This is a huge opportunity for us as CTIs. It's exactly the sort of partnership that we talk about developing. This is a grassroots partnership that she was able to develop. That's just to show you guys, all of us in our local markets can act.
That's a we, not a me, okay? My
Yes.
team, part of my team is Zach down there I've got Giuseppe down here that's going to run it up north. That's a big group of us that committed to this. JNR and my team down south, we're getting it going in Texas, but it's going to go out. It's going to take everybody and a commitment from a lot of us.
Yeah. So the point I wanted to bring out with that is that initiative didn't come from CTEF. That grew from the ground up, and it's a huge thing. So go look at the article. The article is really interesting, and if you can, sign up, reach out. It's a huge opportunity for us. Decton University, and it's in Tile Letter. It's on the Tile Letter website. If you go through the Facebook groups, you'll find one of Aaron's posts. I'm sure of it. So, did anybody have any questions about that or any of those updates? You can raise your hand if you do. All right. So we're going to move on then to sort of the main event. We're going to talk about state requirements. This is one of those thorny, hot button issues. It's one of those things where some people are very much for it. Some people are very much against it. In reality, it's one of those things that our certification, it's the direction it has to go, right? I mean, we all tear out tons of failures constantly. We're sick of it, and unqualified labor and lack of requirements holds down our wages artificially, right? So one of CTEF's long-term goals is to get state licensing for tile. Wet area installation. Tile is one of those hard things that's been almost impossible to license. It's very difficult to figure out where that fits in, especially with the structure of things. So for those of you who don't know, Craig Harriman in Omaha, Nebraska has been working with IAPMO and IASI. Wait, hang on, you're muted, Craig. I'm going to unmute you. Don't know why it's not unmuting. Waiting for Craig.
Because I had it muted.
Oh, there you go. So it is IAPMO and
the UPC.
The UPC.
Yep.
And he's actually been instrumental in getting the TCNA B details into the UPC appendix, which means in the UPC, they had a shower detail like we do, except that theirs was 40 years old, something like that.
Yeah, it was an older version of what we would consider the 415.
Yeah, it was very old. It was very vague, not very detailed. So now in the 2021 UPC, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The TCNA details have been adopted into the code, which means that as municipalities and local jurisdictions start to adopt that code, those details and how they'll be built go from being industry best practices to being law. So this is
it's a weird thing there because technically the TCNA is methods,
right?
But the fact is it's included within that code book when you purchase the upcoming 2021 UPC code in the appendix on page 419 through 428 is actual drawings of the UPC or the TCNA section B, which outlines how showers should be built.
Right. So this is a major milestone in the march towards licensing. This is the first step to getting shower receptors redefined, to getting.
Does that mean?
Yep. Go ahead, Paige.
Does that mean plumbers are gonna have to do the waterproofing?
So we're gonna hang on. I'm just gonna hold off on the questions for just a minute because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish kind of outlining this, and then I'm gonna start taking questions for Craig to answer. But I'm just gonna finish this recap really quick. It's the first step to redefining what a shower receptor is. It's the first step to redefining what wet area installation is, and by extension, carving that out specifically as a licensing area. So, Paige, since I can't see you, I'm going to take your question first, and then I think Jason had a question.
Aaron also had a question.
And then Aaron. So go ahead, Paige.
Yeah. I was just wondering since they're gonna adopt adopt that into the IAPNO plumbing code book, does that mean plumbers are gonna have to do the waterproofing? Or is the CTEF trying to go after the state licensing to allow tilers to do that waterproofing?
Greg?
Because that's two totally separate trades now.
So what this really is doing, one of the most important parts in describing who does what is we have to look at who the ANSI Secretariat is. And in this case, the ANSI Secretariat is the TCNA. And what this really does is this establishes prior work. And this is kind of in the future, but one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have with licensing is going to come from what is known as the UA, which is the United Association of Pipe Trades, which are, they are the plumbing union. And by getting this into the UPC, what this establishes is that, no, this is the tile trades, this is the tile trade secretariat that shows our best practices, that this is actually traditionally tile trade work. And the people who are going to be really doing the super heavy lifting in the oncoming months and years on this are going to be the UBAC.
And UBAC
because they're going to be the ones who are going to go head to head up against the United Association of Pipe Fitters and Pipe Trades, and they're going to be settling it at the union level, saying, no, this is our traditional work. We do this. This is tile setter work.
So just so that everybody's clear, for those who aren't aware, UBAC is the Union of Bricklayers and Associated Craftsmen, which, am I correct on that, Craig?
Yep.
All right. Which is the union that for tile setters in union areas, just for those of us who aren't in union areas. And so if I understand your message correctly, Craig, because the details and methods on how to build showers comes from the ANSI Secretary of the Tile Council, that kind of already starts to put it in the purview of tile installation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Paige, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So next was Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, just, I mean, whether this hits a subject or whatever, but as far as when you say, when I hear plumbers do the waterproofing, etc., well, I'm a weedy person, so does that mean they have to install my system? But, and besides that, it's kind of a two-part question, because my main question, that question came after what I just heard. My main question was, who would I initially start to talk to in my state to get? So we are not regulated at all.
Right.
And
What state are you from, Jason?
Indiana. And I mean, my grandmother could tile. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're not going to flood test. They're not checking anything. No, even if I have a complete permitted job site, the shower means nothing to them.
Right. So go ahead, Craig. What's the answer? Who can we talk to?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get with Joseph here at the end of this, and I'm going to give some note documents that will answer a lot of these questions. I'm not quite sure how to upload them at the moment. That's the only reason why. But they're just notes that have come from the last couple. This has kind of been a passion for about the last 2.5, 3 years. But there's a way that you can talk to people. What we talked about last week about becoming the local expert. Become the local expert in this. Let me say one thing, and this is probably the most important thing. There's one group of people who are more sick of bad showers than we are, and that is the local plumbing authorities. Because every time there's a bad shower, they call up the plumbing inspectors and say, why did you let this happen to my house? And they're looking for answers. They are fed up as much as we are with the situation at hand. So they're looking for solutions. We can provide those solutions for us.
So Craig, if the question is who to go talk to, would a good first place to be to start be local code enforcement?
Yep, your local chief plumbing inspector. That would be the first. However, before you go and talk to them, You need to do some backhand research, figure out what code they're using. Find out, because they talk in code, and both that's figurative and literally. So you actually have to really be fairly well versed in what your locality is doing. If you don't, they're just going to dismiss you.
So
And so
be the local expert and
Mhm.
train yourself in that. So I think Aaron had the next question, and then we'll go to Oliver. Aaron,
Sorry, I
you
lost
said you had a
a
question?
moment.
Oh, okay.
I
I'm
do.
gonna.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you want me to come back to you?
No, I
Okay.
need to see Craig's face. There he is. Okay. Hey, Craig. I've been a fan since the technical meetings at Coverings, listening to your work. So this is
Thanks.
really exciting that you're in here and involved with us, and even happier that you're a big part of CTF with all the work that you've done. And I put in the chat for San Antonio, we're talking about local level. In San Antonio and really Austin and some of the bigger cities in Texas, we're regulated by those shower pan inspection letters. So
Okay.
I know we do it. Zach's on here, he does it on that A118.10 waterproofing, liquid applied waterproofing method, but I left it in the little link, and I think that's a really great way for us to get some of this information on what's coming,
Sure.
and for us to see, or if we could I think Craig should be writing some sort of newsletter blast about this that we can share and go to our local plumbing codes and what that means, right? Like, what
Right.
is a certified tile installer? What is CTEP? What is the new code that's coming out? I mean, I think that information that's shareable and that content, Joseph, is something we should bring up, because we can take it to the local level and disseminate that information on what it means on our level, like that shower pan inspection letter you just saw, right? Like,
Sure.
here's the chief plumbing guy. This is what's coming. Let's be, like you said, Craig, those local level experts on
Yep.
educating them. That's what it's all about. And I think we need to be ahead of the curve on this.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things, and right now the shower receptor, I don't know if anybody here can tell me what the definition of a shower receptor is, but in the plumbing world, that is actually a legal term, and it refers to a very specific portion of the shower. And if you can imagine like the Fiat shower bases, that is the receptor. And in the plumbing world, that is the plumbing fixture of a shower. So it contains the drain hub, the shower for a site, the shower liner, the curb, and 3 inches above the curb. That is the shower receptor in the plumbing world. The problem is we're building these showers that are just crazy, and they're so different. And so we need to add in the plumbing world, and this is my goal it was my goal for 2020. I don't know how that's going to happen with this weirdness that's going on with COVID, but my goal for 2020 is to get into the IAPMO, a change for the upcoming 2025 code, which includes not only the traditional definition of a shower receptor, but also the new definition of a custom shower assembly. The custom shower assembly is defined as, it is a shower assembly which has watertight, elements that exceed the, I'm trying to read this and trying to write.
This is deep technical stuff.
That exceeds the perimeter of the shower receptor. So if you have a bench that exceeds past, if you have a niche that goes into a wall, all of those become custom shower assemblies, which must be treated different. Because my goal, and here's how we get licensed, is we are technically manufacturing custom shower assemblies, which means we are now unregulated manufacturers of plumbing fixtures. And because we're unregulated manufacturers of plumbing fixtures, we need to be licensed and we need to be controlled by the plumbing oversight world. And this is how we get licensing, because licensing is a political thing. It's, you know, standards are technical, but in order to get licensed, we have to have a reason. to be licensed. And the reason that we need to be licensed is because we are now building showers that exceed the definitions that you have in place in the codes now.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, and I realize I'm rambling. Let me ramble just a little bit.
Go, you've earned it.
The second reason is that with the advent of the lead energy efficiency mandates, houses have become airtight. Used to be a small leak that went into a stud bay would just evaporate out. But today's homes, that same small leak goes in and creates toxic mold and other allergens, which we can say now will contribute to the lethality of COVID.
Yep.
This is not, and this is how a local oversight body can legislate changes. They have to have a health and safety reason to add licensing. That's why people who do fingernails, they get cuts, and that's how they get into licensing. That's why you have to have licenses for people who do pedicures and manicures. We now have a reason for licensing because of the lead energy efficiency mandates. These homes are wrapped so tight that a bad shower creates a health and safety hazard. And secondly, these showers have moved from a small utilitarian fixture into these custom things that are featuring many changes of plane, multiple valve sets, interconnected horizontal flow areas which receive water and direct its flow, but do not meet the definition of a receptor. And I'll pass all this information on to you guys. It just,
Thank you.
I'm obviously passionate about it, but
Amazing.
So we've got a lot of questions, Craig. So
Okay.
we're going to go in this order. Oliver has the next question, then Joe, and then Wayne, and then Jason, okay? So
Okay.
let's start with Oliver. What's your question?
You said that the TCNA or the NTCA is your figurehead for like
TCNA, Tile Council.
the TCNA. So my question is, if one, how are these licenses going to be applied for? I don't want to question it. Like, I don't like this idea. I love the idea. I'm just, how are they going to be applied and supplied? Like, how do you earn one? And also, if the standard is going to be through the TCNA, do you have someone on that board on with you? Because if you were requiring a license based on TCNA or NTCA standards, no foam products, like some of the sheet membranes don't
true.
have a standard made for them yet. They would have to go back to concrete or cement board and the ones that we actually
I
have.
can give some
standards
answers
for.
there. So the TCNA is our secretariat for the ANSI. So our ANSI A108, A118, and so forth are all handled by the TCNA. What I have done, and this was back in TSP, and I talked with the folks at the TCNA. So our standards right now are what do I want to say? Industry standards. There is another level of standard which is called an ANSI, and it's a professional qualification requirement standard. And my goal, what I want to have happen this year, maybe early next year, is to make a joint TCNA ASSE professional qualification standard. So let me go back. TCNA is our tile council, and they're our secretariat. The ASSE is the American Society of Sanitary Engineers, and they hold the ANSI secretariat for plumbing. Okay? And I want to build a professional requirement standard for wet area tile installers. Now, ANSI professional requirement standard is a nationwide standard. It's approved. People who do scuba tank repair have an ANSI professional qualification requirement. People who do telecommunication tower work have an ANSI professional. You are presumed to be an expert if you hold that standard in your field. Okay.
So will that take the place of the ANSI standard that you would need for the products you're using?
Here's how it applies to the CTEF. One of the necessary things about getting an ANSI professional qualification requirement is you must have an independent third-party testing organization. The CTEF happens to be an independent certified testing organization. So in order to, so the requirements that I perceive for the wet area tile installer are this. You must either hold a back journeyman's card or a CTI to prove your competency in tile. If you are going to do a 415 type shower, you need to hold an ACT shower module certification. If you are going to perform a Weedy or a Schluter or a Prova or any other brand, you must have specific training in that brand that manufacturer supplies. So the CTI is an integral part of this method. As a matter of fact, it is for non-union people, it is the requirement to show competency in the installation of tile itself. Then for any individual waterproofing system, the plumbing world is full of proprietary systems. I'm wearing a Vitrolic shirt here. This Vitrolic builds those hub connectors for piping that they use for carrying steam or for carrying the fire water, sprinkler water. You have to have a proof of training from them in order to install the Vitrolic, but that's what they require to install the Vitrolic. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if you have what you need in that area, it can go beyond what you have an ANSI standard for as far as products. Because Aaron sent me the cementitious coated. It does have an ANSI standard, but that only gives you Weedy and Prova. Lady
Right.
Creek, Fluter, and Go Board.
There's more.
So hang on a second. So let me clear this up just a little bit, just to sort of bridge this gap. So the TCNA being the Secretary of ANSI, right? To get the qualification to perform these installations, you need to be a CTI or a BAC journeyman. And
Correct.
then beyond that, if you're going to use a different system, you would need that system's proof of training in that system. So WEDA certification or attendance at a Schluter class, etc. Am I correct on that, Craig? You'd have to have
Yes.
something that you could show that you have
Yeah.
proficiency in that
I
system.
love that idea. I don't want to be like
the CTI.
throwing stuff at this like I don't love the idea. I'm all for all of this. I'm just trying to think of where we might run into problems trying to get through.
There will be tons of problems.
We're creating something from nothing that not everyone in our
Right
trade
now.
even wants in the first place. So
We have nothing right now. There's nowhere to go but up. There's nothing right now. We have to make this mean something.
100%. And just one more thing that I want to clarify. Aaron shared that the cementitious extruded polystyrene foam, it's TCNA approved. It is not ANSI. There's no ANSI standard for that. Just to clarify that those are separate.
There's an ASTM rating, and I'm
There's
sure
an
Craig
ASTM
knows what it
rating.
is. Yeah, there's an ASTM rating. Anyway.
Yeah. So does that answer your question though, Oliver, as far as how that would work?
Yeah, I got too long-winded with it. The idea was that if we're trying to basically create an ANSI standard for a new thing, I just realized that it would require something, and I didn't know that the educations that the manufacturers are offering could fill that gap, which is awesome. That
Gotcha.
As long as they're providing the proof that we need, that we're keeping up with their educations, we're good to go on that, or we will be.
Well, additionally, this means that each manufacturer will have to make a training program that's
right language
suitable.
and everything,
Yeah.
right? They'd have to
Or
have
run
it
it through
worded
CETA.
properly so that it fit what we were needing.
And who knows, it might end up being the sort of thing where these companies might offer that as a CE for CTIs to maintain their certification. So we've got a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in the past is sort of the roadmap for CTEF and CTIs. A lot of this is going to roll into each other. So I'm going to roll on to our next question, which is Joe. What you got?
All right. First off, is it Chairman? Is that his name?
It's Craig Harriman.
Craig. Okay. Craig, I have to start off by commending you. That is tremendous to make that initiative, and it's a game changer. I think a upon everybody else, you know, in the future, they're gonna look at you as the implementer of regulating the biggest failure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it is the biggest failure in the home, besides the foundation. So I have to come in on that one because
Oh, we lost you for a second, Joe.
Oh.
Yep, there we go. I can hear you now.
okay. So yeah, so I have to commend you, Craig, on that one. It's
Thank
going to
you.
be a huge game changer. Did they create a sort of a statistic, official statistic, on the amount of shower failures per state, so on and so on? I would imagine it's got to be a tremendous amount.
So I can speak to that a little bit. One of the interesting things is that the best way to check failures, because there is no statistics, because there's not enough information, the best way to get that information, and we've talked to them already, is through individual insurance companies. Each state has their own insurance rules and regulations. Many states, unless they are very proactive, showers that leak are considered not an acute problem, but an overtime problem, and are not even covered. And most insurance companies don't want to cover them because it's such a constant and continuous serious problem. So there's no real data on that. And I've actually reached out to the insurance world, and they said, well, no, we don't have any data on this, and no, we don't ever think we want to collect any data on that. So
Okay.
that is the chief answer is it's so bad that they don't want to touch it, and if they look into it, then they're going to be accountable for it. And so we have no real idea of how many fail.
Okay.
Craig.
So-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so here's the thing that could also reinforce that, because I'm all 100% board, because in my local area, you have painters, you have landscapers, you have masons, all these, in our industry, it's very unregulated. And
Yep.
everybody knows that. They're building these showers, which causes 100% of those failures,
Yep.
unfortunately. It's because of uneducation. With that being regulated, will significantly drop those failure rates. And I'm all on board that everybody should go proceed with the CE courses, just to be up to date on the the new rules and regulations. I think that's a big game changer right there. We just
Agreed.
need more detail, paper, something official from one of valid organizations that as CTIs that we can share with clients. Because you look on the internet, and this is the way I sell, is that the biggest failure is a shower.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can't find any articles out there. Schluter does one excellent analogy, and that's something that I use a lot. And Paige, you can clarify on that particular one, but one of their slides is that a shower receives more rain than the state of Washington.
It does.
Yep.
Right? So that is one of our arguments over there. And what I use to reinforce my sales tactics is, do you really want somebody who's unlicensed or unfamiliar in this unregulated area to build your shower, where you should be hiring the most qualified individual?
I'm taking it.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Hang on. I'm gonna throw to Erin real quick because she's got something she wants to add on that.
You know, I like what Giuseppe's saying, and Craig, maybe that is the CEU that is used. You know, we're talking about this list, Joseph, that I shared with you on the 5-star.
Yep.
Giuseppe, I think, Joseph, I think that ACT, there's a great one. I use it all the time. It's the ACT way to build a shower. And that is probably one of the best CEUs you can use for multifamily hospitality homeowners. Maybe that's the one with all the work Craig has done that we let, you know, that's the catalyst for CTIs to use. I think that bridges it all together. I'm going to share it with you right now.
I love
Don't
it.
tell Scott.
Everybody,
know,
make sure you're checking the chat. Craig just posted the ASSE professional requirement standards outline.
So this was a letter that I sent to the lady who is in charge of the ASSE professional requirement standards. She had agreed to meet with us back at TSP 2019. We weren't quite ready there. Then we were going to try and meet all together at coverings, but obviously that didn't happen. But the goal is, the reason we want to do a combination ASSE TCNA joint ANSI certification for wet area tile installers is, when we present this to local plumbing boards, when they see ASSE, they're going to go, oh, this is our guys. They are behind it. They're going to back it. There's not going to be this pushback that would normally be the case. Our biggest enemy in this whole thing, as we try and get licensed, and I'll just let you know this right from the beginning, is going to be the National Home Builders Association. It is their stated goal to minimize the amount of oversight to build a home. And they are well funded, and they will push very hard to try and minimize what we do.
Yep. And
Because they want the GC to be able to be the final word on anything, so they only have to have one guy there.
they want to turn over houses as quickly as possible.
Right.
Right. And you know, most houses now, at least in my house, in my area, they have a 2-year warranty, and after that warranty, you sign it, and it's a lawful contract. They're held harmless against damages after that. The fact is, a shower leaks, it leaks at the very first use. However, it doesn't manifest as a problem, usually from 5 to 10 years. And that's after the floor has rotted through and they all of a sudden see all this damage occurring. Because until then, it's just been rotting the studs, rotting the subfloor. But until that actually manifests, which is long after their warranty, they don't even notice. The people living there don't even notice it. And so it's a very
and their immune system is weakened, and they're more susceptible to COVID-19. And I can see how maybe we make this all work.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna just real quick, just for a quick clarification, Craig, can you explain what ASSE stands for?
So the ASSE is American Society of Sanitary Engineers. The ASSE is the ANSI Secretariat for plumbing. So they handle the plumbing national standards. And just like our handbook is kind of the methods, the IAPMO code, it's different because it's actually it's more of standards than just methods like our TCNA handbook. And then once it gets adopted by a city or a state, it becomes law or statute. So the rules are a little different with that because they're actually enforceable and they're punishable, whereas standards are voluntary, and the worst that can happen is you can be sued in civil court. I've gotten an education on standards, methods, code, and law in the last couple of years, but it's been enjoyable.
Maybe we'll be able to get you to write an article breaking down the distinction between those, because I think a lot of people get confused between standards, methods, best practices, code, and law for stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I made an absolute I at TSP last year I totally misspoke, didn't know what I was doing. Fortunately,
You did it. You were great.
well, thank you, Aaron. I'll tell you that it was that was a challenging day.
So I'm going to move it on to the next question, which I believe is Wayne. Wayne, I think you had something you wanted to ask.
Yeah. According to the definition of a shower receptor, anything that's curbless or does not have a door on it, it's not a shower receptor anymore?
Well, that's part of the issue and why we need to make those changes. What happened was the shower receptor in the plumbing world is just that receptor. As a matter of fact, when we flood test, or the flood tests that are, So there are 3 flood tests that are common. One is the ASTM 5957, which is a flood test on horizontal surfaces. One is the UPC flood test, and then one is the IPC flood test, which is the International Plumbing Code. They no longer reflect the reality of the showers that we are building today. That's the case. And so one of the things that we have on our list of what we need to do is we need to rewrite a new flood test or a new testing method by which we test the waterproofing of a shower for water tightness. You know, I've had the opportunity. I now sit on the ASTM subcommittee D08 for waterproofing, with the goal of rewriting that in the future. But some of that needs to come down to redefining what the shower is. I've learned that there's so many puzzle pieces that have to fit into place before we start asking for licensing, because what's going to happen is individual cities don't want to have to do all this work. We have to do a turnkey. Here it is for you. You adopt this, and here it goes. I know I'm going down a bunny trail now. One of the biggest things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to write a book called the Handbook for Municipal Inspectors for Guidance to the TCNA. And I realize I messed up that thing. It's actually, but we basically need to build a supplemental handbook so that way an inspector can go and look at a shower and say, okay, based on the pictures on this handbook, that shower passes. Based on the pictures of this handbook, that shower fails. Because a plumbing inspector has never actually looked at showers. They have no idea what they're looking at. So we have to provide for them a method by which they can evaluate. Otherwise, whichever city that adopts it is just going to ignore it if we don't have that available to them. They have to be able to pass it. The other thing that we have to do is develop a method by which we can test a shower off via video and turn it in, and they can get to passing. Anyway, I'm really rambling far off.
No, that's fine. It's one of those things where the plumbing and electrical code, they were kind of always, or they were there from the beginning, kind of building in all this stuff.
They just don't realize what we've changed.
Yeah, we have to fit
our
ourselves
showers in the last decade and a half have shifted so radically from simple utilitarian fixtures into these grand things that we're building today. And because they're not inspecting them, because the plumbing inspectors have no, they inspect the rough-in, which is the potable and the stack set in there, and then they inspect it at final when they turn on the valves and they see them working, and they go, oh, that's great. They have no idea of the actual shift that we've done in the last 2 decades into incredibly, really awesome showers. And until we inform them, hey, this is a fundamental shift, and hey, you need to look at this and this and this. The leaks aren't coming at the drain hub connection. The leaks are at the curbs. The leaks are at the benches. The leaks are at the niches. They're at all these changes of plane. And so what the plumbing world is concerned about is, how is that hub connected? Is the least likely to leak of all the things that we're building today.
Yeah. Wayne, did you have another follow-up on that you wanted to ask?
Well, it's just locally, when we get an old school inspector, I'm really tired of building temporary dams on a curbless shower to put 2 inches of water above the drain.
So let me ask you how you're doing that.
Water.
What do you mainly build? Do you mainly build with Schluter?
Yep.
So the best way that I found with that is take a piece of Kerty, a piece of Kerty band, glue it at the front, take a 2x4, put it right behind that Kerty.
Done.
Use that as your buildup. When it's done, just go back, reseal it. It'll cover up those screw holes, and you'll be there.
That's exactly how we want you to flood test a curbless shower.
Boom.
That's what we've been doing, because other ways I've tried it, I always end up damaging the Kerty, and then I got to go back and redo it because I want to be able to sleep at night. So,
And you know, these are the things that, you know, it's funny because these are the things that will have to be dealt with when we update the new ASTM testing methods for showers. And you know, I'm going to try and, you know, there's so much training. It's funny. This has become literally my hobby. Some people race cars. I've been doing this for the last few years.
He's been
And
deep into
it's really
IAPNO.
pathetic, but that's what my life has devolved to.
So I'm going to move us on to the next question. I think, Jason, you had another question?
No, I might have scratched my nose or something. I'm just
Oh, okay.
kind of,
Gotcha.
I'm kind of sucking all of it in because being in a state that's not, I mean, like, I'm talking not regulated at all. So this is a lot of good information for me.
Yeah. So does anybody else right now have a question for Craig regarding the future of standards and how that's going to transform into licensing for us? Oliver.
Just a quick one. If this is going to be an uphill battle for sure. So if there's any way for us to get more shoulders behind it, you know, make sure you have as many contacts as you want so that we can help if there's any way to do that.
That's a great. Zach, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, actually, so I was not necessarily just like a question, but more of like a commentary on the licensing and what's going to be the uphill battle. The problem is we're fighting against a completely. You have an electrical inspector, you have a plumbing inspector, and there's no tile inspector. So I don't think not that I don't think, but until we have that, I think it might be an uphill battle. So this workaround that I think that I've been listening correctly, we're trying to make sort of a workaround to that. It's a good solution, but that would be a good venue to venture into where we can try. For years, we've been sort of in the background chatting on social media going like, why isn't there a tile inspector? And that could be a good way to maybe jump into that transition.
Craig, what did you want to say to that?
So we will never have a tile inspector directly.
Yeah.
Well, let me explain. For political reasons, and here's why. Each little area has their own domain, and they're not going to let that up easily. The best that we can do, and this is how I think that this is the best way, and is most of the time the most important two groups within any building inspecting group is the plumbers and the electrical. And usually the plumbing inspection over officials are the most powerful within any building group. We take them in as our bishop, if you will. Once we get 200 or 300 members within a locale, then we have a group that's politically powerful, that is focused in direction. Then when there's all of a sudden a hurricane or a frost and we have some EJ 171 issues, we go, hey, you know what? We need to enforce these as well. But we do it from a local politically powerful group that's already there. That's how we get the rest of the TCNA in. Matter of fact, one of the things that has hit was I was recently asked about, what do we do with electric heating things when the electrical inspector says, you know what, we've had so many failures that electricians have to run the heating coil now. That sounds like a second spot.
So Craig, you're essentially, your answer to what Zach was bringing up is that instead of trying to develop an official tile inspection, we're really carving out a tile inspection into plumbing code and letting that juggernaut sort of pull us into that world.
Can I add on to that though? I mean, would it, and correct, I mean, I'm not saying that this is the better way, but because it's actually essentially a prep problem, it's essentially prep that we're doing, not a problem, but we could actually sort of add it into more of the general inspection potentially, and doing that through the ANSI standards and TCNA standards, et cetera, and creating a new standard where it's actually sort of required for building inspectors to do it in conjunction with the plumbing, maybe is a is a possibility. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen because of politics. I agree with you. I'm just saying if we're spitballing, let's spitball.
And
Well,
then I'm going to let Craig
the
answer,
biggest
and then
thing
we'll go
here
to
is,
Jim.
I think that one, we are effectively custom manufacturers of plumbing fixtures as we build showers. That is our strongest way to move in. You know, they've been trying for 20 plus, 30 plus years to get licensing and have failed. There are cities right now that want to license. We just need to provide all the background to get that happening. The response that I have from the IAPMO, which is the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, has been extremely cordial. And they, like I said, plumbing officials hear more shower problems than we do. They are looking for a solution. They are usually the most politically powerful group within any building department. What we need to do is make friends with them, have them utilize us. Once we get political power in any locality, make then the changes over to get the rest. No one is going to say, you know what, we're going to branch out and do a brand new tile inspection unit, and we're going to budget it with X. And
yeah, and I'm sorry to cut in again, but you know, like a framing inspection, you're not a licensed framer, and I'm trying to maybe offer some type of simpler solution. Because
hey, Zach, I'm gonna cut you off there,
Yeah,
just
no
because we're getting a little bit into the weeds on details on how this will be implemented when we're a little too early on that.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Jim. He's got a question, and then I think Wayne's got another question, and then we'll start to wrap up after that. Go ahead, Jim.
So I don't have a question, but you know, everybody's from different areas, but I live in a real regulated area up here, and everything's licensed and all that stuff. It's not, we get shower pan inspections all the time. You know, it's city of Seattle doesn't do them, but a lot of the suburbs do. And some of the guys are, there's probably 2 jurisdictions that are, the guys are really, really good, you know, as far as inspecting them. I'm like impressed. So anyway, it's what Craig is saying is all pretty normal for me, but it may not be for, you know, for everybody else.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Wayne, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, just in 2 different places that I lived, the licensing process was you got a business card, and I showed them the business card, and they granted me a license just to get a check. So, you know, it's got to have some meaning to it. It's got to actually represent something.
There's 2 different types of licensing. We need to probably address this right now. One is contractor/business licensing. And then the second one is a competency licensing. We look at that. The best way to describe what I'm trying to do is a competency licensing, much like HVAC. And the HVAC profession kind of really hits what we're trying to do here, because electrical is run into that HVAC system. Gas is run into that HVAC system, which is, one is the purview of the electrician, one is the purview of the plumber, but anything in that box belongs to that HVAC guy. Anything within that box, that shower envelope, belongs to the wet area tile installer. That's my goal. We're not going past that box, so the plumber is still running all of his potable, whether it's the sprays, whether it's the diverter, whether it's the valves. He's responsible for that. He's also responsible for all the piping from it. But within that box, that is 100% the responsibility. And with that responsibility comes just that. If that shower leaks, it's no longer pointing to the plumber or pointing to here. It's that shower wet area tile installer's, he's responsible for it. You know, that's my goal with that, is to define exactly what our responsibility is, and then to take that responsibility. Because as a competent installer, we can build showers that last a lifetime.
Yeah. Paige, you've got something you want to say?
Yeah. I don't know how many states there are, but I know there's not many. But I know Virginia has a license for tiling. So what would happen to those folks who have a license to tile?
So most
With
of those
these
are
changes?
so most of those licensing are contractor / business licenses. California also has a tile contractor licensing, but they are not a competency licensing, which would be a continuing education requirement, a testing requirement. I know that there are a couple of counties in Florida that have a testing requirement. I know that New Mexico has a licensing requirement that says you have to have tiled for so long. My goal is to build a competency test that revolves around the CTI as a basis. And then if you're doing a 415, which is the standard water in, water out with a liner, then you also have to have the ACT. And the only reason we want to do that is because the liners are no longer proprietary, and there's no company doing training for them. If Noble or Henry or one of the other companies that was manufacturing those products had a very good training method or a very good training program to train people how to use them, that'd be one thing. But the fact is they don't. So what we're hoping for is that proprietary systems provide training, and they want that. I know that Prova and Schluter and Weedy all want people to use their product, and they are more than willing to train them how to use it, so that way there's never a problem.
Yeah. Does that answer your question,
Thanks.
Paige?
Sure does.
All right.
Thank you.
Joe, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so Craig, what's the only thing that is holding the
Holding what?
what's holding back the board to accelerate the certification?
Well, I think right now the thing that's holding us mostly back is COVID. And I say
Aside
that
from that, though.
well because we're supposed to have some serious talks during the coverings conference, and those never
Okay.
happened. And because of the travel restrictions and all that, some things that should be happening to help us progress just haven't because of does that make sense? I mean, I'm not trying to make that a scapegoat.
No. It's obvious. It's obvious for for those reasons. I got three things I want to bring up real quick.
Okay.
One, it's going to have repercussions in more liability for us tile installers, but we could pass on that expense. Insurance rates are going to go up for us.
Maybe, not necessarily, and let me explain why. So we've been in talks with the insurance industry about that, and the fact that we
love it.
The fact that we are now licensing and are showing professional competency in this will cause insurance, let me think of the word, actuaries to hold off on adding prices, because this is a brand new group. And until the brand new group starts to fail or succeed on their own, they're going to say that, wait a second, these are actually people who are more competent than before, than the general group, and the prices
Love it.
won't increase.
Love it. You're covering all bases. That is absolutely excellent. How about the glass guys when they penetrate the curb?
So there are 5 elements to a shower, and one of those 5 elements is the enclosures. I don't have the answer to that. The other elements, let me look this up here real quick, because I need to make sure, we've taken so many weird notes, but
yeah, Deco SG.
Deco SG. We got you. Don't touch that glass. We got the glass too. Get out of here.
I know the letter. I have that letter, and I always provide that to our homeowners because I don't want to take on the responsibility as well as the GCs. So can we standardize that?
Well, so here's what happened. I got voted down by 1 vote because I opened my mouth stupidly in Omaha. And they said, so should plumbers be able to do this? And I said, no, it should only be tile guys. When I should have said, yes, any plumber who wants to undergo the training necessary should be able to do this too. But after that, I realized that we needed to go through all this background work, that we needed to get into the UPC, the TCNA handbook, that we needed to figure out how to reassess how we test. Anyway, going on. So how that works for us is we go back and we make sure that all these I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So when this happens in any locality, we're able to make this viable. Because one of the biggest problems is the first location that does this is going to have to figure out a way to get 100, maybe 200 tile guys licensed within 18 months, which means that we're going to have to figure out how to get them trained so that way they pass the CTI, so that those who are using the traditional methods pass the ACT, that we get the testing methods available so that way those members can, and that means talking with the manufacturers and maybe, hey, every system you buy of ours, we're going to give you a $50 bonus to pass this test. I mean, these things have all been discussed. I've talked with the CDTA, which is the Ceramic Tile Distributors Association, about making, as this happens, that city, all the ceramic tile distributors get together and push for testing, and it's an opportunity for them too, because what's going to happen is as they license them, they're going to move from 500 people just doing it sorta to maybe 150 people doing it a lot, which is an opportunity for these distributors to lock down really good clients in a very concentrated way. So we have to pick, at times I feel like I'm Faust, that I'm making deals with the devil. But, I'm willing to. I know.
You're playing a politician's role, you know what I mean? So going back to that, they're very political, obviously, these organizations. So they, in order probably to accelerate it, and they really think that it's not necessary to regulate it. What if we use a political ploy that they use regularly and bleed out like articles and allow consumers to comment, and we can provide that documentation. Here you go, the board. We have over 2,000 comments across the U.S. that are all stating the same similar issue. And I think that with documentation will support the argument for it to be regulated.
Well, and I'll tell you, that's kind of what this is really useful for. There was a time when one guy was the right guy to do this. Certain things had to happen. Matter of fact, when I came before TSP, the very first thing Chris said to me was, "Who are you and who do you represent?" And I'm like, "I'm just a tile guy, and I represent having good showers." But there's a time for one guy crying out there, wanting things to happen. He can get things done that groups can't, because, and I'll tell you what, the key to this whole thing was getting the TCNA handbook in the upcoming code, because that will allow the BAC to defend against the UA as they try and encroach, because they've already heard, hey, look, we should be doing this, and so it's kind of funny. One of the first calls that I got way back in 2018 was from Mike Hawthorne. And if you know who Mike Hawthorne is, he calls me up, "What are you doing?" I'm like, and you know what? They've become I would consider him a friend, and they are in on this. They want this to happen.
He's on the CTF board of committees representing the union. He's on the board with us.
Yeah. He is the trade head of the BAC, but he was very, very concerned about what I was trying to do and whether or not the plumbing world was going to take this all over. because that's how they do it. They're like, oh, this is plumbing work. And fortunately, I was too naive not to listen to people. And so I listened to everybody. And but the goal is we want showers that work. And as long as we have that as our goal, because we want the people who spend their hard-earned money to get what they paid for. It's hard to argue against that. And it's hard to fight against that when it's the truth.
Yeah.
And, I can't say that enough. But when we build good showers that last the lifetime of the house, when they decide, you know what, this tile is ugly, and that's the only reason they want to change it, then we've been successful.
So, all right. Joe, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that? Did that answer your big three? I can't hear you, so. All right. So, I think that expends our time. I'm sure everybody's got lots more questions. If anybody has questions, you can email them to me. My email is onthelevelgreenville@gmail.com. Craig, I don't know if you want 1,000 emails getting sent to you, but if you want to, you can append your email into this.
I'm actually typing in my phone number.
Okay.
Anybody who wants can call me.
So it'll be in the chat, everybody, his phone number. I think we
Craig,
can
was there a form you sent in the chat? I didn't see it.
So I sent a couple. So the things that I sent here are just OneNote passages. So what happened? The background with this was early 2018. I got a red tag in Omaha for putting in a Schluter shower in a. We had a big fire in kind of our party area, and it was a 5th floor condo thing, and they said Schluter showers are not allowed here. And so I went to the then chief plumbing inspector. It was on a Thursday. The day before, they had a big row with the weedy guys, and we sat down. We talked for about 2.5 hours, and he said to me, you know what, why don't we get a code change? And I went in to get the code changes, and the plumbers there basically outlined what we should do to get licensing. They're like, how do we know you're good at what you do? And I said, well, our industry actually has a test called the CTI. And it is a competency test. He goes, you know what, anybody doing showers in Omaha, they should have that. You're right. And then they were like, well, how do we know if they have been trained in the situation or the product that they're using? Well, the manufacturers are concerned about their warranties, and they actually have training. Great, everybody who should do. And basically, they wrote out what we should do to license people. And I wish Scott Crothers was here, because I called him directly after that. And I'm like, look, we have a chance to get licensing here. And Scott was, I think, looking at me thinking, go Don Quixote, you just go ahead. and so that's what that's been. And so for the last 2.5 years, I've probably put in about 1,600 hours in learning about this. I've downloaded codes from Europe. I've downloaded codes from Australia, from Canada, learning how they handle wet areas. I've joined the ASTM. I've joined the IAPMO. And it's become a passion. And then I've had some really good people helping me. I had asked questions, and some folks would take my calls, and they'd listen to me, and they didn't quite say you're an idiot, but they were willing to say, you know what, think about this. Dave Gobus was the one who pointed out, look, no one's going to change anything unless it's a health and safety issue. And that's when we got to looking at the fact that LEED building requirements cause these houses to be wrapped so tight that they actually foster mold growth. And it wasn't until we had that notion, it wasn't until that we made those that connections of it's a health safety issue, because these houses have changed, that we can now come before you as a plumbing board and say, you need to regulate this. Until it's a health safety issue, most cities won't touch it. And so dotting all these I's and crossing all the T's it's been, I may have been a kind of the part of it, but it's been a lot of people helping. I can't.
Catalyst. Called
You
the
know what?
catalyst.
You know it's
Yeah.
you talk about the health and safety thing. My sister just sent me a text message just saying that she's like testing positive for mold toxicity, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's probably coming from your
That's
shower.
exactly what we want, because and I hate to say it, but there's an old thing that says, never let never let a tragedy go to waste. And in our case,
Just to be clear, Paige, CTEF does not want your sister to suffer from mold toxicity. That is not an official position.
well,
I'll let her know.
and the thing is that the CTEF, as I got into looking at the ASSE, at the notion of ASTM, or correction, ANSI professional requirements qualifications, it's almost like our industry made the CTEF because we needed to have a third-party testing organization, which is exactly what the CTEF is. We test, the NTCA trains, we test for competency. And, the fact that we built an ACT system with the unions to where it's a industry-wide system, that meets the qualifications that will allow us to get ANSI wet area tile installer professional requirements qualifications in place. And by having that, when you go before a city and you say, look, there's a wet area ANSI professional requirement standard, they can't argue against that. They can't say, oh yeah, whatever. No, that's our national standards. These are our national standards for competency. That's why I really want to push them, because the plumbing world can't argue. The plumbers can't say, well, we can do it just as well. You can if you have this standard. And by making it a joint TCNA ASSE backed ANSI standard, then it's that bridge of both worlds.
So I'm gonna start wrapping us up. As I said, if there's any questions, you can call Craig. He's gonna post his number in the chat. And in the chat right now, Erin posted a blog post that she wrote all about showers and mold toxicity, and with a link to a test on Amazon as well.
Did I get it?
Really send that? I send that to our customers because I'm so tired of the phone calls. Oh, can you reroute my shower? It's turning black. I lost it one day. I was like, that's it. And then I'm gonna say absolutely, and everybody in the office sends that link to them.
I am gonna steal it.
First. Why don't you click on that link and you get straight to your house on Amazon, little box where you can test.
Oh, we lost Aaron. So if anybody has any questions, call Craig. His number is in the chat. I'm not going to say it out loud because we're going to post this up on YouTube as well for people who are missing it. You can email me as well, and I'll be happy to forward anything on to Craig as well. Again, my email is onthelevelgreenville@gmail.com. So thank you so much, Craig, for being on here. It was super, super valuable, super helpful. I hope we can do a follow-up on this eventually as well. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Wayne, thanks.